The 2018 Tomb Raider film reboot, based on the video game reboot, is sadly one of the best video game movies of all time. The video game movie bar is set so low, even a run-of-the-mill, pretty generic film rises to the top, and that is the case here. Now, I will always have a soft spot in my nutsack for Mortal Kombat. That film has not aged well. It's very cheesy, very corny. But I still like it. The sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, holy hell, that is a fun watch. One of the dumbest movies of all time with some of the worst CG I've ever seen on the big screen. Definitely check it out if you haven't. When I saw the trailers for this Tomb Raider, it looked really bad. My expectations were at an all-time low, and the Destiny's Child I'm a Survivor remix song did nothing to quench those fears. Thankfully, the song's nowhere in the film. I do like Destiny's Child, Survivor. Beyonce is a treasure, but I didn't want that in the Tomb Raider film. I really didn't know what I wanted, honestly. The 2001 Angelina Jolie vehicle is just not good. It's really silly. It's a product of its time, but it was based on a product of that time, too. It was definitely Lara Croft, front and center, breast and center, really. Those triangle breasts were pretty hot. Angelina Jolie kind of recreated that. I don't know what kind of bra they had her wearing, but kudos for staying true to the character. Fast forward over a decade later, Square Enix is back with a new version of the character. She's more grounded. She has a bow and arrow now. She still brandishes guns, but her physique is more in check. It's more realistic. I mean, the proportions are still phenomenal if you ask me. She is still very sexy. I'm not gonna lie, I spent a large portion of my time playing through that game just kind of staring at her ass as she's on the side of a rock. I mean, the animators and the designers spent all that time crafting it to perfection. I'm going to at least appreciate it. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Alicia Vikander's no slouch in the looks department. She's a beautiful woman. She was phenomenal in Ex Machina. I was excited to see how she performed in this, and she performs well. But they like went out of their way to unsexify her. Matthias is the villain. Looks like a cross between Rick Grimes and Guy Pearce. He may have been from the game, but once again, I was really just concerned with looking at her ass and not so much the plot of that. Plot-wise, the movie cherry picks a lot of things from that first rebooted game and a little bit from the second one. There's a little bit of a tease for another film. You see all this shit play out, though, in the trailers, in the dialogue. You know what's coming before it even happens. I called out like 3 times lines of dialogue that would be said before they were. There is a large level of predictability if you've ever seen any sort of action movie here. I even knew the ending months earlier based on the trailer alone, and I'm not going to spoil it. It doesn't really matter. It's not a weighty film. If you want to hear me predict the spoiler, though, go watch my cringe video. I don't know which one it is. Just watch them all and you'll find it. You're welcome. Not a lot of characters in this. There's a boat companion that kind of tags along with her here and there. By the end of the film, he has so little to do, I actually forgot he was even in the movie. There was definitely some winks at the audience like, this isn't the game, remember this? And some laughable dialogue, especially one that stood out when they're doing a puzzle later, and Lara, God, I hate saying Lara. Can we just call her Laura? Can we just call her Lara Croft? Anyway, she yells out loud, "It's a color puzzle!" Like, is that a thing? That's a thing people know? A color puzzle? I mentioned the story. It's straightforward. It's not this nonsensical bullshit that 2001 had with the planets aligning every 5,000 years. She goes on a boat with her boat companion, and then the boat breaks, and so she's on the island, and things happen, and she goes into a tomb. Speaking of the tomb, that shit's pretty good. I like the Tomb Raider aspect of it. It was very Indiana Jones-ish. There's a lot of traps going on, puzzle solving. I mean, that's what you do in the game. During the boat sequence, though, as she's running away from the CG waves, some shit falls down in front of her, forcing her to have to think off her feet. She looks up, and there's some bars conveniently placed across the top, which is definitely a nod to the game. And I just kept waiting for like an X prompt to go so that she could grab up and climb across, or for the bars to be like a convenient yellow so the gamer could see where to go next. There definitely is some nods, but it's not overdone. And if you didn't play the games or even knew for some reason this was based on a game, you probably wouldn't even think twice about it, but it's definitely there. There is a bit of the whole she's like 90 pounds soaking wet fighting a guy that's 3 times her size aspect of it that is hard to chew, especially in like a rain fight later where you're like, okay, she's fighting a mercenary. This guy should be able to kick her ass. Earlier on, there's a couple chase / parkour-ish scenes that are very underwhelming. This came off a bit lame, like a 90s Airborne type sequence with the rollerblades going down the streets and jumping in slow motion. And I expected like Radical to show up a couple times, especially when she's on a bike. Bottom line, which is right around this area, I'd say that this movie is definitely watchable. It's serviceable. It's damn near a masterpiece for a video game movie, which says very little. As for an overall film, it's just, I've been there, I've done that, I've seen all this so many times better. Watch it at home. I wouldn't waste your money on this in theaters. And let's just assume they're gonna make 2 or 3 more if this one makes any money, because it's very clear that that's what they want to do now. Everything's a franchise. Everything's a franchise.